Добрий день, ви мене...
Hello, we can hear you well. Yes, so we are going to start very, very soon. There were some technical challenges, but hopefully this will not prevent us from communication. Ladies and gentlemen, it is 118th day of Russian invasion and 9th year of war with the Russian Federation. I welcome all the journalists who are sharing the words about our victory. And today we are going to discuss the Istanbul Convention with Kateryna Levchenko, the Government Commissioner on Gender Policy. So why is Istanbul Convention ratification so important? Hello, Andrei. Hello, dear audience. It is indeed important because this convention sets the best standards against violence, gender-based violence that impacts both women and men. The convention that was developed by Ukraine and other countries, members of the Council of Europe 11 years ago, and it is seen as the golden standard of fight against violence. So if we intend for the democratic changes, if we want to value human rights, it is very important to fight violence. And also it's a very important civilizational step because the aggressor country, the neighboring country of the Russian Federation, is strictly against this convention. They believe that this convention poses a threat to a totalitarian world, and the Russian Federation has did a lot for this Istanbul Convention not to be ratified. So I am grateful to all of those who supported the idea of ratification. What's in there in the convention? Well, in the convention there are articles defining what is violence against women. It describes the types of violence. This includes rapes, forced marriage, forced sterilization, abortions, also the crimes against women's genitalia. Also it defines what is domestic violence against women and against men. So there are four types of violence described: the physical, economical, sexual, and psychological. So Ukraine has also introduced these approaches to the legislation. We have done a lot in terms of law enforcement, and it is in line with the Constitution of Ukraine. In order to ratify an international document, we have to put the national legislation in line with it. So we have some questions in the room. Hello, I'm Vitaly Holod from Ukrinform. A number of members of parliament did not vote for this, and there were 8 people against. They represented different political factions, and right now the gender organizations on Facebook are disclosing these people. So will this entail any negative consequences for cooperation with these members of parliament in the future? And also some religious organizations were against it as well. Thank you for your question. I would consider the experience of the countries that have ratified the convention many years ago, because actually it was available for signing and then for ratification since May 2011. Quite often those who are against the ratification are listing the countries that has not ratified the convention. There are 6 such countries in the EU members, but they are not naming the 20 EU members that have ratified it already. And in total there are 35 countries that have ratified it. Italy, Spain, Serbia, Montenegro, Albania, Germany, etc. It's a long list of European countries, and in their case, I do not see any worsening relations between members of parliaments of those countries, or between the members of parliament and the general population. So you can easily find the long list of those countries. So I believe it's an exaggeration. It's a conscious manipulation. And if let's say if we consider yesterday's session of the parliament, we did not hear any arguments supporting the position of those who are against. Actually, their position is not based on any particular article of the convention, but actually convention puts out the mechanism of fighting against violence. There is an obligation to establish shelters, hotlines, provide compensations to the victims. By the way, here Ukraine is postponing the implementation for several years. Also, there is criminalization of some types of violence, and it's not only about changes in the penal code, but also there are some administrative offenses that are being introduced. So this convention actually helps to fight against violence. It's not going to worsen the situation in the family. And speaking of religious organizations and churches, there is some dialogue with them, and I know that a number of priests are supporting the convention. And speaking of regular believers, I would not like any organization to privatize the relations with God, because, well, actually it's not some religious organization, it's the big family of believers who have to decide, and many of them support the convention. So this privatization of spirituality by many religious organizations, that's, I believe, what is dangerous, because we can see that this activity can pose a threat to Ukraine. And actually, Church has a right to have their position on the number of important issues.
2 questions. First one, how long do you think it might take until you...
Я вас не чую, вибачте, будь ласка.
Запитання. Go on. I'll repeat that.
Okay, I will. Okay. How long do you think it might take to Ukraine until it will ratify this convention?
Запитання журналіста, скільки
So, I didn't. Can you hear us now? Yes. So the question was, how long will it take for Ukraine to complete the ratification of this convention? Thank you. So it has to be signed by the president of Ukraine according to the existing procedure, and then the secretariat of the Convention of Europe will accept this, but the day of voting in the parliament is believed to be the date of ratification.
Just a second, because I noted it. Yeah, you spoke about human rights, and it's very important to defend women's rights and human rights for all. And this convention, in the Article 4, paragraph 3, includes also reference about discrimination on grounds of sexual orientation and gender identity. We know that in many countries there were debates about this, but how strong...
Колеги, я, на жаль, не чую.
перша частина запитання полягала в
So the first part of the question. Yes, finally I can hear you. So the first part of the question was about the mention of discrimination based on sexual orientation, and also it prohibits violence against gender identity.
Yeah, and there were debates in many countries about this. We know.
And what's
this.
the question?
And the question is, how strong do you think it's the will of Ukraine to eliminate the discrimination based on sexual orientation?
Наскільки сильною є
So how determined are Ukrainians to work against this discrimination based on sexual orientation? So what I can tell here is that this implies actions against providing support in case of violence and prevention activities. So among the possible reasons for discrimination, such as gender, age, ethnic identity, religion, there is also sexual orientation and gender identity. And indeed, there were some discussions about this article, and it was perceived as an article, for instance, legalizing single-sex marriage. But let us read the article carefully. The article, just like the convention in general, is not about single-sex marriage or other issues related to people with, let's say, homosexual sexual orientation. It only defines the grounds for non-discrimination. These are separate things, and indeed we also need to protect all kinds of people regardless of their specific features. Thank you. This was Kateryna Levchenko, and our next briefing is going to take place at 1:30. We will have Damien Magru, the spokesperson of the International Legion.